Welcome to Bidayat's Inspiration Series, in which we hear from industry movers and shakers to learn about their professional journey and get motivated by their career advice. My name is Andrea Batilla, and today we meet Sara Sozzani Maino. Ciao Sara, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you.
All right, so the first question would be, can you tell us a little bit about your education and how you arrived to do what you do today?
Well, I'll try to be short because my career has been in the industry for the last 25 years. And regarding education, well, I studied English school since I was a kid until 18. And then at 19, I decided to study foreign languages. And maybe studying wasn't really my focus at that time. I wasn't so clear about what I wanted to do. I grew up in a family which was fashion oriented, but I was not interested, but I wasn't kind of touched on what my family was doing. I was a kid, so having fun and studying and seeing friends, so I wasn't really current of what was happening around my family and what they were already doing in fashion. So I decided to begin to work while I was studying, and I began to work with Carla at that time. She began.
Carla is Carla Sozzani, who is your mother.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So I started to work with Carla, my mother. That moment, since 2 years, she had opened 10 Corso Como. So I wanted to kind of begin to have a little bit of knowledge also on work and studying at the same time. And then, likewise, when it happens with family, it's never easy, to work. So I had this urge of trying to find something else. And well, in the end, I went from one family member to the other. And at that time, Franca Sozzani, she was editor-in-chief of Italian Vogue. So I asked her really candidly if she needed, help or someone, as an intern. So that's how I started really my journey in fashion. And I started it really in a very blank sheet. I mean, I didn't know anything about fashion. I didn't know about photography, and this was for me a great opportunity because we are talking about mid-90s.
And you actually started from the very scratch, because your very first job at Vogue was at the wardrobe, right?
Yeah, it wasn't the wardrobe. I went to the wardrobe too. My first job, I was lucky enough that when I started in 94, 95, it was the 30th anniversary of the magazine.
Right.
So I was completely locked in an archive for almost a year. And that's where my education came in fashion, because I had the opportunity to see all the editions of Vogue before it was named Vogue Italia, because Vogue Italia was named in 1964, before it was called Novità. So I kind of observed 30 years of fashion from 1964 to 1994. And there I learned everything. I learned about fashion photographers, about fashion brands, about style, trends, about all the changes that happened in those 30 years. And really, I always feel myself privileged, but more lucky even about living the period where there was time, where we were not in a rush. There was still not all these social networks, and internet was coming. We were sending messages by fax, which you think it seems like, I don't know, like 100 years ago, but we're talking about 20 years ago. It's not so far. And so that was kind of interesting time for me, because I had really the opportunity to absorb and had the time really to understand what I liked, which sometimes, when you speak to the young generation, you ask them, well, how long it lasted your internship or everything, and it usually starts from 6 months to, I don't know, a year max. Well, my internship probably lasted like 7 years.
So in that year that you spent in the archive, not only you came to love fashion, but you actually acquired your own taste. You decided what you loved more and what you loved less, right?
Yeah, I acquired and I understood my taste. It was like my education process of understanding fashion, of understanding photographers, fashion brands which I liked, labels and everything. So, and it was funny enough because I always say it, and I don't keep it a secret, that I also, the knowledge of who was which photographer. I mean, for me, Alfa Castaldi, I thought she was a woman instead was a man, or Michel Comte was, because you just had these big names and you never had, the opportunity to meet them. And I was really lucky enough because during the research for the archive and preparing the book, so we prepared the book with Franca and the art director at that time, Luca Stoppini, was like that in the end, these photographers, I met them, obviously. And for me, it was like putting the face to the images. So it was really a privileged situation. And at the same time, it was really like kind of my education as a school in, getting the knowledge of fashion and also understanding in which direction I was going. And like my internship, I always say almost lasted, 7 years, because it was years where then I worked in the fashion department. I began to work as a assistant stylist. I had the opportunity to do on sets of Steven Meisel, Helmut Newton. So it was everything new for me. And I understood that, I was living something very special that, people outside would have killed, to be there. But probably even the fact of, learning everything from scratch gave me kind of a blank paper to understand which was really, my direction. Because obviously, starting such a young age at Italian Vogue, which was the best magazine, the best place to be and everything, there was also that challenge part of saying, okay, I'm already in the history.
Yeah.
How can I get my path? How can I understand where I want to go and, get my identity? So this came up a little bit later on. And after being assistant stylist, I became stylist myself. And at that time, I was very eager to do research, because when you do prepare fashion shootings, you have to, apart from getting the usual designers, but, search for something new to give taste to your images and, taste to your own style. And that's where I began really searching for new designers.
But can I ask you, before arriving to this topic, is there any particular memory that you recall of sets, of shootings, which is something that, is perceived as very romantic from the outside, but doing it takes a lot of effort. But do you recall any specific memories, something that you're still in love with, of that part of your job?
Well, I have many memories. I have to say that being on set with Steven Meisel is kind of an experience, because you realize, how fashion is inspired by so many other elements such as art, culture, history, photography. And Meisel is, the genius in fashion photography. It has also been linked also to someone that managed to copy and recreate what has been in the past, but with its personal style. So being on set with him was totally an inspiration from what was around, from models, clothing, but also mood boards. And that was always kind of a special moment. Then there are obviously moments of recalling of episodes, which are full of them. But one was, which I was very lucky to be on set a few times with Helmut Newton, which he was kind of a very strong and very focused man, and knew what he wanted. I remember, I'm gonna be quick, that he asked at a certain moment he wanted a picture with a full small luggage with full of money, real money. And so the stylist came up to me and said, okay, we have to find a 24-hour bag with, all the money inside. Okay, but he wants it, he wants real money. And I said, how can we, I'm not gonna go on a bank robbery. So I did what usually you don't have to do when you go to the photocopy. It's written big like this, saying, okay, you cannot photocopy money. And I photocopy money like for 1 week. And then I just put the real money on top, and then we go for the shooting. It was on Lake Como. It comes up the picture time, which was her opening up the luggage of the car and opening up the bag with the money. And at a certain point, he stopped everything and said, who the P did this bag? And he turned to the stylist, and the stylist pointed, it's her, it's Sara. And I was like, And he
And
like,
what was wrong with the
well,
money?
that was first like, it was not even about the real money, because he understood that we couldn't bring the real money. He like for half an hour explained me the direction of how the money had to be put in, because the direction of the money wasn't. And then he looked at me very candidly and said, so, next time you have a bag full of money, you know how to put it on.
Of course.
And of course, I was like 23 and said, okay.
That's very nice. Okay, so then you have spent a very long time working with Franca Sozzani, who was not only editor-in-chief of Italian Vogue, but your own, as you said. Of course, she's one of the most iconic person in fashion history. Is there, something that you recall that went really bad and something that you recall that went really well?
Well, yeah, even there are a lot of episodes, and working for Franca has been a unique way of understanding how to approach life, work, and also thinking that nothing is impossible. She was a woman that if she wanted to do something, she did it, and taking all the risks. So this is something that the people that were lucky enough to work with her, learned about not having any kind of boundaries, and going above the boundaries without being afraid of their choices. And she took many important choices that had positive and negative feedbacks social-wise. But one, I recall that obviously Franca was someone that if she understood that you were ready to be responsible, she just gave the project and said, okay, you do it. But she didn't even was interesting to know if you ever did it or not. Basically, most of the time you never did anything about what she asked, and she thought that it was the most natural thing to do.
Yeah.
So one time she said, okay, you have to prepare these 3 fashion shows. You speak with Giselle, Alessandro Dell'Acqua was one, and then the third one, designer, I don't remember. Yeah, it's something with MTV. Well, you just prepare a show of 80 looks. And okay, and you were not saying, I never did a show, I don't have the slightest idea of what you're talking about, but you just said yes. So I went outside the office and said, okay, now what do I do? So, well, in the end, I prepared the show and everything, and I remember there was the whole layout, and I was at the Super Studio in Milan, and I had to reach her home to show her the show. So I went out with my scooter, and at a certain point, it started pouring rain. So I arrived at her house that I was like dripping. I went home, I put the layout, and then she looked at the layout, and then she looked at me. She said, she took a picture, I'm not saying which designer, because she said, listen, if you think that this is a designer and that should be in the show, I think you cannot be my niece anymore. And I was so I kept it. I tried to keep it and said that anyways, this has to change everything by tomorrow, because then she had changed the idea. But basically she didn't tell me that she changed the idea. So in the meantime said, I told you that, and I said, oh my God, how can I tell her that it's not? Because she changed the idea, but maybe she, not forgot, but she thought that maybe you could understand her mind.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, I changed, I opened the door and wanted to throw myself down the balcony, but...
But you didn't.
No, I didn't. So that was one of the... And then...
And what was the best one?
The best, there are many best moments, but when I began to find, my direction about, searching for new designers and scouting, and Franca was always very sensible to the new generation and to support the new generation. We had already founded Who's On Next in 2005, and I was continuing to bring, images of these new designers.
Who's On Next is the talent scouting project of Italian Vogue, right?
Yeah, with Italian Vogue, with Alta Roma. It was founded in 2005 because it was a moment that Made in Italy was struggling, and it was made to support Made in Italy. Italian designers, or not even Italian designers, even international designers, a scouting project that now it's at its 15-year edition, which gave over to the new generation of Made in Italy designers. And so we were already focusing on that, and then she saw potential, and seeing that I was really eager to support, and it was end of 2008, she told me, why don't we do something more specific, for the new generation? And I said, well, I would love to. And so I said, well, let's call it Vogue Talents. And this was probably the most happiest and more energetic moment of giving birth to a project that was not existing and to something that nobody was still doing effectively. There were some contests, some things were already happening, but not so much.
So this became the center of your research, spotting talents. Is there a way that you have to actually recognize talent in a designer, or how do you do this?
Well, the question of recognizing talent, it's always a question they make me, and always, not that I struggle to answer, but it's not, there is like a vademecum or something that you have to follow. I think talent is something very rare, but at the same time, especially in the last probably 5 years, it's about even the message you want to give. It's not just about anymore doing beautiful clothes, which is obviously fundamental, but beautiful clothes is objective. You can like it or not. I learned myself by selecting designers all over the world that you don't choose by your own taste. You choose because you have someone in front of you that he or she has potential, a message, and wants really to engage in something that you've never seen. So you have to look at a little bit more broader. But obviously now it's fundamental, the message, the vision you want to give, and who's your consumer. Right. Probably when I started, it was more about the clothes, the collection. You looked at more, how it was photographed, the quality, which is always obviously important. But now there's so many other different elements, which could be also responsibility. But the message is fundamental. The message and what you want to change by doing your collection, right. Which is...
So what do you think is their struggle in this moment of young designer? What do you think are their difficulties now?
Well, the main struggle for each designer in this has always been 10 years ago and nowadays. Nowadays maybe it's better because with social networks, communication, it's a little bit easier. It's about being seen by the industry, being supported, and then obviously at the beginning there's problem of economic support. But nowadays designers, which I always tell them, obviously the economic part, it's fundamental, but you have to get into the market, whether you are very small or you become big immediately, because there are cases like that. But you need to go with your own identity, your message, and if people really begin to want your product, then those who want to invest in you can come over and approach you. But this cannot happen all by itself. It's about a system. It's about media that has to support the new generation. So the new generation is our future. So the industry, media, investor need to support them. Obviously, it's not that we can think about getting everyone in, but I think this is very important that the old generation supports the new generation, because thinking about their future and our future, we need to really believe in them.
Well, thank you very much, Sara, for being with us. I think we'll meet at the next show. Can't wait.
Thank you. Really a pleasure.
And of course, thank you everybody for listening to us. There will be more in this series, more videos and more characters that we will interview, like Sara. So just follow us on our YouTube channel or on bidayat.com or on our Instagram, and you will get to know much more. Thank you.